Alright, so on this video, I'm going to show you guys a couple of hints as you work through your assignment, some things that you need to look for and some things that you need to pay attention to is when you're working these problems, you need to always stop and think about what's happening to your numbers. And so I'm going to start on this first problem here where what you're trying to fill in you're basically trying to fill in a gap here. You're trying to fill in something times 38 and 50 hundredths gives you 385. So the first thing that I would suggest you look at is what's happening between your two numbers. You're going from 38 and 50 hundredths to 385. So between this number here and this number here, you're getting a bigger answer. And so that should tell you, one, you're multiplying here and you're multiplying by either a 10, 100, or 1,000. And so what the next step would be is looking at this and thinking about, okay, if I am going to be multiplying by 10, 100, or 1,000, how many jumps occurred? And so it looks like, and I'm going to write this out to the side, it looks like it went from 38 and 50 hundredths to 385. So to get that, it looks like it just made one jump. Because now if that decimal is all the way to the right of 385, basically I just moved it once to the right to get that. And the only way I can move it once to the right to get that answer is I'm going to be timesing it by basically 10 here. So one jump means 1 0, 1 0 means 10. Okay, go down to the next problem. So the next problem is you have 453 times something, and then you get 4 and 53 hundredths. So you're getting a smaller answer. So that tells me that your answer shrunk. So it didn't necessarily, you didn't times it by 10, 100, or 1,000. You maybe timesed it by 1/10 or 100th or 1,000th. Because again, when you're timesing by a part, your answer is going to shrink. And so again, out to the side, I'm thinking, all right, if it was 453 and then it went to 4 and 53 hundredths, if I was here with my decimal, it looks like they moved it twice to the left. Okay, so if it's shrinking and I'm getting something smaller, then I'm timesing it by a part. And if I'm moving it twice here, so I'm thinking, okay, it can't be times 100, but it could be times 100th. And so my answer here is going to be decimal 0.1. And that's because, again, you're going from something that's bigger in 453 to something that's smaller in 4 and 53 hundredths. You'd have to be timesing it by part there. You couldn't be timesing it by 10, 100, or 1,000. All right, next example. Same thing. Look at your two numbers. Think about how is it going from one number to the other. This time I'm not going to write it out to the side. I'm just going to kind of use the numbers that they gave me. So they're going from $8.07 to $807. So I'm getting bigger. So again, if I'm getting bigger, I'm thinking times 10, times 100, times 1,000. Well, to go from $8.07 to $807, then they would have had to make two jumps. And if they made two jumps with that decimal there, that means two zeros. So it looks like they times that by 100. Last example, you're going from 4,067 to 40 and 67 hundredths. Again, you're going from something in the thousands to something just at 40. So you're getting smaller there. So again, think, I can't times it by 10, 100, or 1,000. When I do that, I'd have to times it by a part. And so it looks like from here, kind of like the one above it, they went from 4,067 to 40 and 67 hundredths. So it looks like they made two jumps. Two jumps means, all right, it's either going to be a 10th, it's either going to be a 100th, or it's going to be a 1,000th. If it's two jumps, you could think hundredths there. They times this one by 100th to get 40 and 67 hundredths. And again, looking at all 4 of these problems here, you had 2 that grew, they got bigger numbers, got bigger answers, but then you had 2 that shrunk. And so the difference is you're timesing by whole numbers, 10, 100, or 1,000, versus timesing by parts of a number, or pieces, or fractions, however you want to think about it. And so that could be timesing it by a tenth, or timesing it by 100th, or timesing it by 1,000th. All right, this page is pretty simple. Again, this kind of reminds me of the notes that we took yesterday. So if you're looking at your notes, this ought to help you out. But again, if you needed to see it again, I'll be glad to show you this. This is starting at 32 8/10. And so it starts with dividing by 1. So 32 8/10 divided by 1 stays 32 8/10. 32 8/10 divided by 10 means that I'm going to have to move my decimal to the left to get a smaller number. And a 10 only has 1 0, so that means just 1 jump. And so my work here would look something kind of like this. I'm going to make 1 jump, and I'm going to create the answer of 3.28, or what you know is 3 2800ths. And then the last part here, same thing. This time I'm dividing it by 100, so I need 2 jumps to the left, and I'm going to create decimal 328, or 328 thousandths. Okay, this last page here, we're going to look at some standard algorithm problems. The standard algorithm, again, should not be that difficult. You just have to stop and think about those 3 steps from your notes. So the first step is forget the decimal and just go multiply. So I'm going to take this first problem here, and it's going to be 850 thousandths times 83. And so this problem is going to be, I'm going to start with the 3. 3 times 0 is 0. 5 times 3 is 15. 3 times 8 is 24, plus an extra 1 is 25. I'm not going to worry about that 0 there in the ones place. I could just like exit out. So I don't need to worry about that. All right, at this point, I'm going to lay an egg and scratch. So I'm going to scratch those out. And now I've got another 0 again. 8 times 0 is 0. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 8 is 64. Plus 4 is 68. And so I'm going to finish this one off by adding. And after I add correctly, I'm going to make sure that I go through step 2 and step 3. Well, step 2 on this problem is you're going to take your problem, or you're thinking about, okay, now that I've done my math, I've got to move my decimals in my problem to the right. So I'm going to take this decimal here and move it 3 times to the right to make 3 jumps. So there's going to be 3 jumps in my answer, or 3 jumps in my problem, which essentially there's going to be 3 jumps in my answer, but I'm going to be jumping to the opposite direction. So I'm going to start my answer with a decimal, and I'm going to jump it 3 times in the opposite direction, which basically means I'm going to jump it to the left. And so if I jump it to the left here, then I'm going to get an answer of 70 and 550 thousandths. Okay, the last problem here is just a 2 by 2. Again, start with just forget the decimal. 6 times 4 is 24. 4 times 3 is 12. Plus 2 is 14. We're going to lay an egg and scratch. 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times 3 is 18. 18 plus 3 is going to be 21. We're going to add this up carefully. Looks like I'm going to have, right now, 2,304. But again, thinking about our step 2 and step 3 from our notes, we're going to have to take this decimal all the way to the right, which means 2 jumps. And then in our answer, we're going to have 2 jumps back to the left. And so I'm going to get an answer here of 23 400ths. So use this video for your help. You might actually see these problems today. So if you're watching these videos, you might have some freebies.